Welcome to Staying in My Lane podcast. Today we have Melissa. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Lindsay.
Do you want to tell your story?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you can start wherever you want.
All right. Well, I feel like it's a long one. It started as an infant.
Mhm.
Um, my mother is diagnosed with bipolar and with schizophrenic tendencies.
Mhm.
And she has her own story to tell, but I was her firstborn to the marriage between her and my father. And while she was pregnant, she wasn't able to take her medication. So immediately after I was born, I went into foster care. So back then, they didn't do a good job of reaching out to family for children that are being removed from parents. They just automatically put kids into foster care. So I went into foster care. I obviously don't remember that. Um, my dad was not a very supportive father, obviously, because you would think he would be able to help take care of me. Um, my mom and dad then had my sister about 19 months later, so we're pretty close in age. And then she, same thing, went off her medications, and we both ended up in foster care together. I think I was about 2 years old when my mom and dad ended up getting a divorce and separating. And so from that age until my teenage or early adult years, I didn't have a relationship with my father. So there was multiple times when we were younger, we were in and out of some foster cares, and then as we got a little bit older, there were some family members that we were able to go stay with that stepped up and offered to take us in. When I was approximately, I think I was 5 years old, I lived in a apartment complex, and kids just ran around the building, and parents, like, they were all friends and just trusted everyone. um, I was sexually assaulted by another father in the building. There was multiple kids in his apartment at the time, but he took me into his bedroom and sexually assaulted me. Now, I don't recall all the details of that. I just remember being very silent, and my mom was very scared and worried about me. And then that started her getting the police involved and going to court and therapy and nightmares. And I didn't have to testify, but I did have to practice testifying. Um, so let's see. Um, then I would say, because my dad was absent, I would say this is probably cliche, I don't know, but a lot of people say if you don't have a father that's present, then you tend to look for love elsewhere. So
Yeah.
I was always looking for a boyfriend in high school, someone to show me love. Um, when I was 16, I was pregnant with my first child, and I had him at the age of 17. Uh, his dad was not nice. I wouldn't say abusive, but he was um, cheating and not present, and just not someone you would choose to have a child with. But I went ahead and had him at the age of 17. So I graduated high school early. And from there, I started working. I didn't think that college was really a possibility at the beginning for me. Um, I think I was probably about a year after my oldest. He was probably about a year old when I found out I was pregnant again with his father's child. And I chose to have an abortion.
Mm-hmm.
I was scared knowing I wasn't getting support from his dad for him, and how was I going to raise two children on my own. So,
Yeah. How did you feel in the moment?
um, it was scary. Uh, he wasn't supportive, not that he wanted to keep the child, but he didn't want to be financially responsible to help me pay for the abortion. So,
Yeah.
I had to pay for that on my own. Um, and then I decided I was going to go to college. So, my son was probably 3-ish years old when I started college, and I went to a local community college, got my AA degree, and while I was in college, I met my first husband, well, soon to be first husband.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I did a lot of partying, going out to the bars, because I really never got to experience that in my younger years. Um, so I got married while I was getting my bachelor's degree in psychology and human services. And we ended up pregnant right away. So I had my second child when I was getting my bachelor's degree. I feel like I skipped over a relationship that was really important as well. So, in between the father of my first child and my husband,
Mm-hmm.
I dated a guy. His name was Adam, and he had a child of his own that was similar to the age of my son.
Mm-hmm.
They were within a year or 6 months. He was abusive. He would do things to make me think I'm going crazy and tell me that I should be in a mental institute. And at the time, I felt like, well, being in a mental institute would be better than what I'm going through right now.
Right.
Maybe
Yeah.
I should go there.
Yeah.
He was an alcoholic, in my opinion. I don't know that he was diagnosed, but he was out drinking a lot. Every time we went out to the bar, he was in a fight. He would go out with his friends. He would cheat on me. He would come home and say, like, just make weird shit up, like, I killed somebody. And
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, what? And
Wow.
then come up with this elaborate story, and it wasn't true.
That's crazy.
He did not let me hang out with my family, isolated me, didn't let me hang out with
Mm-hmm.
my friends. My job was to stay home, take care of the kids. I did have a job, but I had to clean the house to his expectation, have food on the table ready for him when he came home. I remember one time he told me that my son had gotten in trouble in preschool and that I needed to punish him. And so I had a talk with him, and he was like, no, that's not good enough. He needs to be punished. And so made me spank him, and then
Oh,
started
wow.
laughing and told me that it was all made up. And I was miserable, and I didn't know how to get out of that relationship. But one day, my son had gotten out of the bathtub, and he had was helping him in the bedroom, and all of a sudden my son was screaming, and I went in there, and Adam was laughing and walked out of the room, and there was a red mark on his chest, and he had punched him, and he was probably 4 years old at the time.
That's scary.
So that was
Yeah.
when I made the decision to leave. I probably the next day or so packed up my stuff and left and dropped his kid off with his parents because he wasn't home. So then now we'll skip forward to when I decided to go to college. I was going to prove this Adam wrong because he told me I would never amount to anything in my life. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna amount to something. I'm
Yeah.
gonna be something.
Prove them wrong.
That was my motivation at the time. It was the wrong motivation, but that's what got me down the path of going to college. So my husband was not physically abusive at all, but kind of the same emotional and controlling of money, controlling of how I spent my time, who I spent my time with. He was in charge of everything. And you could tell he was depressed and unhappy, but he wouldn't get any help. So, my son was 5 when we met, and then we had my daughter, and then had a son after that. And around the age of, my oldest was 16, my youngest was just turning 5, and my middle child was turning 8. I had told my husband that I wanted a divorce, and we had been together for about 9 years, married. And instead of getting help, he chose to complete suicide that evening. Myself and his sister were the ones to find him. He had drove in his car to a location and unalived himself with a gun to his head. So now I was a single mother of 3 children, and I've never once believed myself for that. So I think that has helped me. But everybody says you grieve differently, and I've spent a lot of time angry at him for bringing children into this life, but then not helping me raise them and leaving me to have to explain to them what happened to their father, why he left, how it wasn't their fault, and them having to experience life without a father. And he really was a good dad to them, my younger two. Not to say he wasn't a good dad to my oldest, but he was very hard on him, and their relationship was very strained because of that. Um, so, going back a few years before the suicide, I was diagnosed with a condition called cervical dystonia. It is a neurological condition, and it's one that's not visible to the naked eye per se. I mean, some people might notice with how my neck turns or spasms, but it was a difficult time. Didn't know what was going to happen, what the diagnosis looked like, going to multiple doctors, and then finding out that there was no cure for it, that I will have to have injections in my neck every 3 months for the rest of my life, plus be on medications. I'm in daily pain because of it. So there's just modifications that I have to make throughout my treatments when it's doing well and when it's not doing well. I don't let it hold me back per se when it comes to doing things for my kids or my employment or anything like that, but it does hold me back. And other aspects because it's created more anxiety in my life. Um, Through all of this, I did graduate from a 4-year degree. I have experience working as a substance abuse counselor. I was a supervisor. I have experience working with children with behaviors. I am now a supervisor for social workers after working in that field for about 8 years. Um, I'd like to refer to myself as a resilient woman, resilient child, I would say. I've never played the victim role. I've always used it as motivation to do better and then to help others. Like, I went through these things so that I can understand other people and I can help them.
Is that your why for social work, do you feel?
Yeah, it started because I was in foster care and
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be a social worker.
Mm-hmm.
And then I didn't work out right away. I never wanted to be a substance abuse counselor. That
Right.
was
Yeah.
like, but then it ended up that it was reversed. I ended up with a social or working with substance abuse and then a social worker, which actually played in my favor because the substance abuse history helped in the social work field.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
my why is definitely um, to help other people.
Well, you are really resilient and you're strong, so I admire you a lot. So,
Thank
yeah.
you.
And you've helped me through a lot of hard times in my own journey. I think it makes a lot of sense hearing you talk more about stuff. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for letting me share my story.
Yeah, you're welcome. Do you have anything else to say?
No, I just want all the listeners to know that um, if you are struggling with a relationship, domestic violence, there's help.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to accept help at the time. People did try to help me. My mom tried to get me to go talk with crisis intervention, and I didn't believe I had a problem or that I was in a situation, but there's help out there, people to listen to you, people to help you through those difficult times, accept it. And if you are ever faced with a situation where um, somebody in your life unalives themselves, please know that it is not your fault. They're just in a lot of pain, and um, it can be looked at as a selfish act, and um, but it's not your fault, and you will get through it.
Yeah. Yeah. What would you say to somebody going through like a really hard time and not knowing how to get out of that?
When you're in it, it just, you don't know how to get out. You might think of all the possible ways that you can. It just doesn't seem feasible. You have maybe children together, you have finances together. A divorce might not seem feasible because you can't afford it, or you don't know where you're going to live, or the person's isolated you so much from everybody that you know that you don't think that anybody's going to listen or help you. But most of those people knew and know your situation, and they are typically more than willing to accept you with open arms and help you in any way that they can. And so um, reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, thank you
Yep.
for coming on and sharing.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Lindsay.
I hope you guys enjoyed that episode. Thank you to Melissa for sharing her story. It takes a lot of vulnerability and courage to be able to share things that we go through and, things that are not talked about as normalized conversation in everyday life. I think it's a really beautiful thing to be able to share our stories and speak our truth and be able to share that with other people, being relatable. That's the whole point of this podcast, normalizing these conversations and these experiences that we have that are not always talked about or accepted in society. So I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Melissa was amazing, and I consider her a very good friend. And so I was very honored to have her on the podcast. And I will see you guys next week. Bye.